Hello everyone, welcome to our CSC Academy and welcome the chapter 2 R.S. Sharma Modern Historians of Ancient India. So in this chapters start before we see in this chapter's topics are. So in this chapter's first topic is colonial views and their contributions, and second nationalist approach contributions, and third non-political writers approach and communal approach. So in these approach we studies what are views in ancient history of India. Let us start. Colonialist views and their contributions. Although the educations of Indians retained their traditional history in the form of handwritten epics, Purans, semi-biographical works, and modern research. In the history of ancient India began only in the second half of the 18th century to serve the needs to British colonial administration. When the Bengal and Bihar fell under the rule of East India Company, 1765. So they found difficult to administer Hindu laws of inheritance. So therefore, the 1706, the Manu Smriti, the law book of Manu, which was considered authoritative, were translated to English a code of gentle laws. Pandit were associated with the British. Pandit were associated with the British judge to administrate Hindu civil laws, and Maulvis administrate the Muslim laws. So the initial effort of understanding ancient laws and customs, which is continued largely until the 18th century, culminated in the establishment of Calcutta 1784 of the Asiatic Society of Bengal. It was set up by a civil servant by the East India Company, Sir William Jones, 1746 to 1924. He was the first to suggest that Sanskrit, Latin, and Greek belonged to the same family language. He also translated the Abhigyan Sakuntalam into English in 1789. The Bhagavad Gita, the most popular Hindu religious text, was translated into the English by Wilkins, 1785. The Bombay Asiatic Society was set up in the 1804, and the Asiatic Society of Great Britain was set up in London in the 1823. William Jones emphasized that originally the European languages were very similar to Sanskrit. So this is a big achievement for the Sanskrit and the Iranian language. So this enthusiased European countries such as Germany, France, Russia to foster ideological studies. During the first half of the 19th century, chairs in the Sanskrit were established in the UK and several European countries. The greatest impulse to the ideological studies was given by the German-born scholar Max Muller, who was largely based in England. The revolt of 1857 caused Britain in realized that it badly needed a deeper knowledge of the manners and social systems of the alien peoples over whom it ruled. In these lines, saying, so British are understanding if we rule India, so get the knowledge of Indian customs and rituals, so simples are effectively administrated India. Similarly, the Christian missionaries sought to uncover vulnerabilities the Hindu religions to win converters and strengthen the British Empire. To meet these needs, ancient scriptures was translated on a massive scale under the editorship of Max Muller. Although 50 volumes of several parts were published under the Scared Book of the East series. So, they started the ancient Indians lacked a sense of history, especially element time of chronological order. So, despotic rules, natives were engaged in the problems, spiritualism, experienced neither sense of nationhood or nor any form of self-government. So these problems in front of British administrators when they ruled in India. The early history of India began. Arthur Smith wrote in the first systematic history of ancient India. His book was based on an in-depth of study of available source gave primacy of political history. It served as a textbook for nearly 50 years and is still used by scholars. Smith's approach to history was a pro-imperialist as a loyal member of Indian civil service. He emphasized the role of foreigners in ancient India. Alexander invasion accounted for almost one-third his book. India was presented as a land of despotism which had not experienced political unity until the establishment of British rule. So, Mr. Wicked Arthur Smith are telling in this book and giving knowledge for the in ancient Indian history have a no different types of rulers have unity between. So, some another chances are given invasions and the name is Alexander. So, however, generalizations made by colonialist historians were we a large either false or glossy excreted but served as a good propaganda material for the perpetuations of the despotic British rule. Their emphasis on the Indian traditions of one man rule could justify the system of which washed all powers in the hands of viceroy. Similarly, if Indians were observed with the problems of next world, the British colonial masters had no option but to look after their life in this world. Without an experience of self-rule in the past, how could the natives manage their affairs of present? At the heart of all such generalizations by lay the need to demonstrate that Indians were incapable governing themselves. So this views, colonialist views, nationalist approach and its contributions. So all this naturally came as a great challenge of two Indian scholars, particularly to those who had received Western educations. So they were upset by the colonialist restorations of their past history and the same time distressed by the contrast between the decaying feudal society of India and the progressive capitalist society of Britain. A band of scholars took upon themselves not only the mission to reform Indian society but also to reconstruct ancient Indian history in such a way to make a case of social reforms and more importantly for self-government. So nationalist approach are for the purpose of self-government. That means Indians are capable for the ruling on self. So British is a native country. The nationalist ideas, Hindu revisionism, but there was no breadth of the scholars who adopted the rationalist and objectivist approach. Mr. Rajendra Lal Misra, who published some Vedic texts and wrote a book entitled Indo-Aryans. In Maharashtra, Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar and Viswanathan Krishna Nath Rajwade emerged to a great dedicated scholar who pieced together varied sources of reconstruct the social and political history of India. Pandurang Vamankane, a great Sanskrit wedded social reforms, continued the earliest traditions of the scholarships. He monumental work entitled of History of Dharmashastra, published five volumes in 12 centuries. He is an encyclopedia of the ancient social laws and customs that enables us to study of social processes in ancient India. The Indian scholars diligently studied polity and political history to demonstrate the India and a political history and that the Indians possessed enterprises, expertise in administration. Mr. Devadatta Ramakrishna Bhandarkar, an epigraphist who published book on Asoka and ancient Indian political institutions. Mr. R.C. Majumdar, who was a prolific writer, and the journal editor of multi-volume publications, History and Cultures of India People. Most writers in early Indian society did not give adequate attention to South India. Even K.A. Nilkanana Sastri, the great historian from South India, followed the same approach in his history of ancient India. But this is more than rectified the history of South India. His style is teaches, but his writing received it. In these presentations of fact, he is a dependable of Rai Chaudhary. Now, non-political writer approach. Mr. A.L. Basam, he writes The Wonder That Was India. He is writing India's past to present, its progress. A few Indian writers magnificently a role of religion and believe that everything good and great originated in their country. Since 1980s, communal approach. Some Indian writers and their Western counterparts have adopted an aggressive and irrational approach to the study of ancient India. Say identified it with Hinduism under the British rule. Colonialist historians deliberately designated India's achievement and attributed important elements of Indian culture and external influences. So the communal writers go on happening on the Hindu and Hindutva. Under the circumstances, historians widened to the objective and scientific criteria have to be alert and adhere to region and long establishment historical standards. So communal approach are showing the as a term ancient history in a, for the Hindus and Hindutva. But it's also exactly not a right for communal views. So knowledge is helpful. So like and subscribe.